Welcome to Faculty Insight, brought to you by Harvard Extension School in partnership with ThoughtCast. I'm Jenny Attiyeh, and I'm speaking with Thomas Nichols, an expert in nuclear weapons and international security. Tom, you're professor at the United States Naval War College in Rhode Island, a fellow at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and you also teach at Harvard Extension School. What is it like for you now that the Cold War is finally over and we're no longer facing MAD, mutual assured destruction? Are you sleeping better at night?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I studied nuclear strategy at Harvard 25 years ago, and it was terrifying. We were really seriously contemplating scenarios where literally you could use expressions like, well, only 40 million people will die, and attach the word only as though that somehow made it less terrifying.
Your academic focus at the moment is the reform of nuclear strategy and the reduction of nuclear stockpiles. What do you think of President Obama's efforts so far? He's managed to sign a treaty with the Russian president to reduce nuclear weapons.
As did George Bush, as did Ronald Reagan. Nobody likes nuclear weapons. And I think since the 1980s, it's been a very encouraging thing to be able to say that every president, from Reagan, Clinton, Bush, all of them have left office with fewer nuclear weapons in the world than when they came in. And I think for any American president, that's something that they can always be proud of. And I think President Obama is committed to simply rid the world of these things.
There's a new documentary out, as you know, called Countdown to Zero. The aim is elimination. How feasible is that eventually?
Well, the problem is that you can't tell people to forget how to make them. It would be like trying to uninvent a telephone. What you can do is try to lock down as much of the nuclear material in the world. And I think it's theoretically possible to get to minimal levels and maybe even zero, but it's going to take a real revolution in the way states think about their sovereignty, about the intrusiveness of inspections, about cooperating at very intimate levels of intelligence sharing. And so it's probably not likely. And I would add one more thing. Zero is a very unstable number. If everybody goes to zero, then whoever has one becomes a real problem. And going from 0 to 1 can be a traumatic moment for the international community. But there's nothing wrong with keeping it as a goal.
There has been a shift in the paradigm, clearly. How has 9/11 shifted the academic study of nuclear weapons and nuclear strategy?
Well, unfortunately, what 9/11 did was to push the whole issue for everyone, policymakers and intellectuals alike, into the background. Not since World War II has there been the detonation of a nuclear weapon in anger. But 9/11 killed more people in one day than the Empire of Japan managed to do at Pearl Harbor in a major attack. And so nuclear weapons seemed to be kind of yesterday's problem. It's a little more complicated than that, especially now that we have new players in the game. I think we have figured out the rules of the road with Russia and the People's Republic of China. Our French and British allies are building down their weapons as well. Little less clear what we're going to do about the North Koreans, who have recently threatened nuclear use against the United States and its allies.
There has been an effort to keep North Korea from developing the bomb for years, and that effort has failed. What remains available to us in our little toolkit?
Well, it's very difficult to talk about what deters the North Koreans, or the Iranians for that matter, because they don't seem to act like normal states. They don't seem to be status quo powers that have a vested interest in the international order that's been built since World War II. And so they're, in some ways, you're trying to peer into a mystery. One thing I think that is definitely a problem for us is that, unlike the Soviet Union, where we were talking about a massive attack in response for a massive attack, we really have to start thinking through the problem of what we do about a very small attack from a country that lives in a very crowded neighborhood. The obvious answer for a lot of people is, well, a nuclear eye for a nuclear eye. If they use a nuclear weapon, we'll use nuclear weapons. The problem is there's a lot of innocent Japanese, Russians, South Koreans, Chinese, who all happen to live in that neighborhood. And I would argue that that's a qualitatively new dilemma for American defense planning. I think in the end, we're going to be faced with the necessity to build up stronger conventional forces to be able to have to fight if we have to under these very adverse circumstances.
Of course, the elephant in the room here is the possibility of nuclear terrorism. Osama bin Laden gets his hands on a dirty bomb, or perhaps even a clean one. How likely is that to happen?
Well, to acquire a functioning nuclear weapon is more difficult than people think, but it's possible. The problem is there are so many steps. The problem for the terrorists is there are so many steps, so many things that will have to go right for them to get the weapon from the acquisition of raw material all the way to an assembled bomb that they can then move. One of the reasons it's difficult is because every intelligence agency in the world is waiting for them to try and do it. With that said, it's certainly not impossible, and I would say at some point in the future, maybe not the near future, almost probable. A dirty bomb is probably even more likely. That's not hard to do. You take a bunch of nuclear waste, you take a non-functional nuclear weapon, you wrap it in dynamite, and you're in business.
So what does the future hold? Tom Nichols, if you wouldn't mind prophesying our doom or our potential doom, do you think that we will do ourselves in? Will the technology that we've developed kill us?
Well, I think that the frightening, tension-laden experience of the Cold War taught us something that made us, and when I say us, I mean the international community, almost kind of grow up a bit, to kind of outgrow that nuclear fixation. And I hope that's true. I think that's what the future holds.
Tom Nichols, I hope you're right.
Well, if I'm not, then we're all in trouble.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenny.
You've been watching Faculty Insight, brought to you by Harvard Extension School in partnership with ThoughtCast. I'm Jenny Attiyeh. Thank you for joining us.